Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Zimbabwe is a failed state. The country has been drifting deeper and deeper into the abyss, and yet nothing is being done to arrest this situation. I think it is no exaggeration to say many people don't even realize that the country is a failed state, much less know what to do about it. It is tragic. 45 years after independence, and we still haven't figured out what is wrong, much less try to fix it. That is a hopeless situation. That means we can only continue to drift deeper and deeper into the abyss. We'd like to focus on the three main stakeholders in this national drama: the ruling party, ZANU-PF, the opposition, mainly the MDC-CCC, and the ordinary people themselves. We'll start with ZANU-PF. If the truth be said, ever since the country's independence, ZANU-PF thugs have been obsessed about securing absolute power for themselves so that they can loot the nation's wealth. They've been fighting among themselves for control to the point where they fail to see anything else. ZANU-PF has had factional wars ever since the country's independence, if not before that. As soon as one faction emerges, it subdivides so that there is another faction to fight. And within each faction, loyalty has been secured by patronage. And when you're talking of patronage, you do not talk of merit or ideology. And patronage is a very weak mortar. It cannot hold. And hence the reason why all the leadership, if each one of them never had any sound sleep, and every morning they lick their finger to check the direction of the political wind. They cannot trust their own colleagues, and their own colleagues cannot trust them. And so we have had this flux where the leadership is constantly fighting among themselves for power and control, while the country is sinking, drifting deeper and deeper into the abyss. Here is Margaret Longo speaking on that very issue. Why ZANU-PF still can boast of the rural areas being its stronghold. Not because they were prepared to do anything for the people in the rural areas, but because the regime was determined to keep the people in the rural areas impoverished and subservient to the ruling party.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
Welcome to the program, Ben.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. You know, ZANU-PF is a classic case of a bad worker blames his tools. When Zimbabwe started out, or when they inherited this country, it was 5-star. It was a country that had great potential. Some even went as far as saying it would have been the next South Korea, of Africa. And unfortunately, ZANU-PF turned it into North Korea. When you look at Zimbabwe, it's a really sad case because you have a government or ZANU-PF that has blamed anything and everything but themselves. The classic case is, oh, it's sanctions. Sanctions this, sanctions that. As far as sometimes if it doesn't rain, it's sanctions as well. There is no hope for such a worker because they've already blamed something else other than themselves that are just poor workmen. This is why you find ZANU-PF has gone as far as benchmarking Zimbabwe between Mnangagwa and Mugabe. Yet that is not the original starting point. The original starting point was 1980, when the country was functioning, when the country had everything going for it. You listen to guys like, for example, Chris Manize Muchangwa. He keeps on going about Manize this, Manize that, Manize that. Look, this is one company. Yet Zimbabwe had steel and iron companies in their numbers. You had Zisco, you had Lancashire Steel, you had Zisco Steel, you had, Zim Alloys, and so many that employed thousands. You cannot benchmark where you want and not start at the original. This is where I find to say, I don't think ZANU-PF can be helped because they are a worker that will blame, everything but themselves, that they just can't get the job done. And unfortunately, we have that kind of a regime that, you don't see any changes, you don't see any progress. And here they're claiming that by 2030, through Emerson Mnangagwa's leadership, we will be upper middle income economy. And you ask yourself, Where is that groundwork? Show us the evidence that we are indeed moving towards that. And from where I stand, I don't see anything. ZANU-PF is a bad worker and will always blame their tools.
Zimbabwe had the opportunity to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The people became aware of the fact that as long as ZANU-PF has got the carte blanche powers to rig the elections, there will be no meaningful change. And so by the late 1990s, the people of Zimbabwe made a conscientious decision to elect an opposition whose primary task would be to implement the democratic changes necessary to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The party that came forward to perform that task was led by Morgan Tsvangirai, the late Morgan Tsvangirai. And they even named their party the Movement for Democratic Change. The emphasis was we are the movement that is going to bring about the democratic change. Unfortunately, they've been on the political stage for the last 25 years. They had their best opportunity to implement those democratic changes during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. They failed to implement even one token reform. Not even one. Why? Because Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of high office. And they forgot about the reforms. And ever since the GNU debacle, they have participated in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, and that participating will give ZANU-PF legitimacy. They've done it out of greed. This is not a secret. This is something that they have themselves acknowledged. One of them, Professor Jonathan Moyo, has stated that in his book. And I've often referred to it and quoted what he said. We cannot pretend that we don't know what is happening here. We do. The MDC have become ZANU-PF Team B in all but name, playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy. They've been warned you should not participate in flawed elections, but they continue to participate out of greed. Here is Professor Jonathan Moyo explaining that very point of the sheer futility of participating in flawed elections.
Chigumba is the mother of the rigging, and Malaba is the father of the rigging, endorsed what the mother was doing. It is actually scandalous. You see, ZEC is not supposed to be controlled by any authority.
Yeah, it's supposed to be independent.
It is an independent constitutional body. In fact, independent commission. It's a Chapter 12 institution. But the ZEC did not run anything important. It never did. The computers were run by Africom. The registration, accreditation, and so forth were run by a CIO company. So between the CIO and the army, they ran the processes, the operations, using their instruments, either Matsanga, who is actually active, she's employed. She joined the, she not joined, she was seconded to the electoral body in 2008 as a divisional intelligence officer. Now she is a director in the CIO. As we speak right now, she's a director, and she was congratulated and rewarded for rigging the 2018 election. And she was given a house in Borodale, a posh mansion in there. So there is a serious problem that whereas on paper, ZEC is supposed to be an independent constitutional body that runs elections transparently, efficiently, and impartially. No, it doesn't. It doesn't because it does not even itself run. The elections are run for ZEC by the Securocrat.
So it begs us the question, why is the opposition then stubbornly continuing to participate in flawed elections only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy? And the answer, like I said, is contained in David Coulthard's book, where he clearly admits that the election process was so flawed. He's talking of the 2013 elections, was so flawed, so illegal, the only logical thing to do was to withdraw. But he and his colleagues could not, out of greed. They knew ZANU-PF is giving a few gravy-trained seats, and they were after that. That is the tragedy. We had a second bite at the cherry, and we wasted it.
You know, one thing that we must add, and that is very, very important, and I want people to, you know, think with a clear head, because what I am going to say is very controversial, but it's true because the facts are there. The current opposition that we have in Zimbabwe has been stopping change. Others may say, you know, I'm ZANU-PF or whatever. But look at it this way. During the GNU, SADC put pressure on MDC leaders. Guys, implement reforms. Guys, implement reforms. Until Morgan Tsvangirai went and told Mugabe that these guys are putting too much pressure on me. You know, what must I do? And Mugabe came out and, you know, started swearing the lady that was in charge of, you know, the Zimbabwean issue about reforms. Fast forward that towards the end of the GNU, when both parties, ZANU-PF and MDC, were in Maputo for a SADC summit, extraordinary meeting there, where SADC again pressurized both ZANU-PF and MDC to postpone the elections up until reforms were implemented. Both parties, ZANU-PF and MDC, refused. Now, which means that MDC was willing to go into elections without any reforms, and knowing fully well that ZANU-PF was going to rig. And the evidence is there. David Coulthard wrote the book and simply stated what really happened. So with all the facts that we have, we cannot turn a blind eye and try and twist history to whitewash or to paint a rosy picture. Events happened, facts are there. That is the truth. And for me, I would agree with you completely to say MDC Triple C are ZANU PF in all but name. And there is no way we can change that because we are seeing it. Every time they participate in rigged elections, they pretend to cry with us. And tomorrow they're taking up their seats and they are very much willing to take up, the the loans and the perks that come with the job, even though there's no medicines in the hospital, even though our children are learning under trees. It don't bother them much as long as they get their allowances, their perks of office, and then they continue. See you until next election.
This picture we have on the screen, I think, encapsulates the problem with Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a failed state because for the last 45 years we've been stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical ZANU-PF regime because ZANU-PF rigged the elections. And this encapsulates that idea, where the president is saying, is everything in place for the elections? And the ZEC chairperson says, yes, Mr. President, would you like to see the results? I've played earlier on a video where Professor Jonathan Moyo underlined this problem that ZEC is not independent. We had the opportunity to make it independent during the GNU. We failed to implement even one reform. And therefore, then to keep on pretending that somehow we can get the results, free, fair, and credible elections and change anything in politics is naive. And yet that is exactly what has been happening ever since the GNU. And now we come to the people themselves. Why is it that the Zimbabwean people have failed to see that reality? First of all, during the GNU, they were supposed to be paying attention to what was happening. When MDC leaders were failing to implement even one token reform, Zimbabweans themselves should have been the ones who saying, wait a minute, why are you not implementing reforms? They said nothing. After the failed GNU, the opposition were persuading ordinary Zimbabweans, and some of them, the supporters, the main supporters of the opposition in Zimbabwe, are not the rural people whom we can say, okay, politically they are oppressed by ZANU-PF. These are people in the urban centers, some of them with at least 11 years of formal education, some of them with even university qualifications. And yet they are the ones, the opposition has always managed to con to participate in these flawed elections. Chamisa has been boasting that the opposition in 2023, that Triple C was going to win big because I have plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. Anyone at all who was following the Zimbabwe political system would know. I mean, Jonathan Moyo there was telling you about how ZEC, it is impossible for ZEC to hold free, fair, and credible elections. Then how did Chamisa plug those vote rigging loopholes? And yet he maintained that he had plugged them. He even boasted a few days before the elections that he was winning these elections. He was preparing his cabinet.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifoiri. Plan yaMwari haifoiri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
Of course, he was lying. Here is the one occasion where he was taken to task for lying.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana, mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana, mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Kasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana, mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
Chamisa is a liar. And yet, 2 years after the 2023 elections, there are many Zimbabweans out there who still refuse to accept that he's a liar. When you have got an electorate with that kind of mentality, you know you've got a problem. Right now, Chamisa, since the 2023 elections came out, he actually abandoned his Triple C party, the one he was saying was going to win big in the 2023 elections, because he said it had been infiltrated by ZANU-PF. So here is the man who was claiming that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, and yet turns out that he failed to plug the loopholes in his own party to make sure that it is not infiltrated. And now he's back on the 27th, 3 days' time. He is already saying he's going to launch a new party. And no doubt, you'll be telling people this time the new party will win the elections. Is gearing to participate in 2028 elections on the basis that the new party will win rigged elections. He has devised ways of winning rigged 2028 elections. And no doubt, if Zimbabweans participate in their millions, as they've done in the past, they will give ZANU-PF legitimacy. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. We keep participating in flawed elections to give the regime legitimacy. SADC cannot do anything, cannot deny ZANU-PF legitimacy if we ourselves believe that we can win rigged elections. We've given up our right to free, fair, and credible elections because we believe we can win rigged elections. How idiotic is that? Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
Thank you. In closing, I just wanted to bring something that I saw in one group. The composition of ZEC officials. I would like people just in their spare time just to look at the composition, and you would find out that the children of ZANU-PF top dogs are the head of ZEC. Now, in our right senses, would we actually think that ZEC with that composition can produce free, fair, and credible elections? Elections that reveal the will of the people? And the answer is straightforward. It's no. Then my question to the people now is, why do you think this current opposition is willing to participate, knowing fully well that ZEC is beyond compromise? It is an outrage. The results have been published way before, the date has ever come up. What they're just doing is just following procedure. This current opposition is ZANU-PF in all but name. They have an agreement that ZANU-PF will win and they will have a seat at the table and pick off whatever, is being dished out by ZANU-PF. They are willing to take the loans. $40,000 loans for MPs. They're willing to take that. 75,000 for a car. They are willing to take that. Stands, transport, allowance, hotels. ZANU-PF, as just like what the cartoon there is showing, they dangled monies, bribes, and the opposition, they are fighting for those perks, not for us. Forget about that. We need to start opening our eyes. One of the fundamental requirements of democracy is to hold those in public office accountable. Ask questions, not to put them on high pedestals or make them, demigods. That, you cannot ask why Chamisa has done this, otherwise you will meet my fury. Then you do not know what change you want. You're not ready for the change. So to my people, I would want to say, it is time for us to remove these blinkers, to think for ourselves. Who are these oppositions, playing for? What is their end game? Is it for the people? Is it for us? Or is it for themselves and their, deep pockets? The question is, are we ready to move forward from this current state? Are we ready? Are we making ourselves ready for real change? And real change will start with changing our mindset. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. To the listeners, thank you very much for joining us. We are going to have an open discussion on Saturday, 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. And the link will be provided in the next video. Sorry we didn't have it ready to display tonight, but we will display it in the next videos. Thank you again. Have a good night.